Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 19 of Nutanix Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got my crew with me. I've got Harvey Green from XenTegra. Harvey, how's it going?
I'm doing great.
I know you've been busy. You've got lots of new tasks and things that have come into your world. I guess I should talk about what we're alluding to here. Harvey has taken over as president and CEO of XenTegra Gov, which is our state and local and education business, SLED. So Harvey is... and deservedly so, moving into a world where he's going to be calling the shots.
Yeah.
Congrats, Harvey.
Yep. Thank you.
Are you, but now listen, we're not going to let you become non-technical. That was my job. I
thought I was just
lobotomy
following your footsteps. You set the template.
I like to think I'm technical. I went on site last week to do a deployment of something, and we did it, man. We got through it, but I had a couple moments of crap. I don't know what to do next.
I did not look forward to any of that.
What,
so I will randomly put myself in crazy situations.
Yeah.
To hopefully try to keep that sharp.
Well, I know you like it. I know you're passionate about it, so it makes it easy, right? It's not. I've got to go somewhere here in a couple of weeks to meet with an organization, and I know they're business guys, and I respect that. At the same time, I love being a technologist. I love working on stuff. It's killing me. I got a sprinkler thing at home where I need to fix my sprinkler system, and I want to do it, but at the same time, I don't really want to go out and dig in the mud and spend half a day knowing I got to go back and forth to Home Depot to get the parts that I need.
Right.
So I'm just going to call a guy and just say, come fix my sprinkler system. I don't have time to dig up half of it again. All right. Hey, Jirah, how's it going?
Good. We had a big birthday party yesterday for the kids here. They're turning 5 and 8. So
nice.
Glad to, having hosted an outdoor kids birthday party, I'm glad to get back to something indoors and very technical. That's much more my speed.
I can't begin to tell you guys how much stuff at my household. We've got graduations and graduation parties and birthdays. It's been like 45 days of something for a while. And I'm ready to hang out a little bit and let summer just be relaxing.
Yeah. This is the last week of school for my kids. So once they're out, then things will hopefully be less. It sounds crazy, but I think it'll be less crazy. Rather than running around like a taxi all the time.
Yeah. I don't know. During the summer, I feel like I taxi more.
Well, I'm hopeful.
Well, you got to make sure that door behind you can lock. You got your lock checked?
It does have a lock.
They don't know how to pick a lock, do they?
They do not. And they don't like when I growl at them either.
I've had a side project stalled out for months now that I need to finish to put a little Raspberry Pi on the door with a little traffic light, like red, yellow, green, like a status light to be like knock or don't knock or come on in.
Yeah. Just get you one that's stuck on red all the time.
Too much.
Go back to Spencer's when we were kids and just get the big stoplight, just force it to be on red.
I don't even need a light. You could just say go away.
Yeah. Do not enter. Well, guys, thanks for joining. I think we're going a little off script today. And instead of doing a blog, we're going to talk to Jirah about the most recent Nutanix release of AHV or AOS or both?
Of AOS, yeah.
AOS. So that happened today?
Today. Super timely. We actually had our 6.0 launch today, actually. So super happy about that. Very proud of it. Like the team globally has just worked like crazy on it, right? So very glad we can get that out for our customers.
So when you're clearly the leader in the space, how do you come up with new things to differentiate and drive? And I'm sure that's in technology, it's always evolving. But when you're already on top of the leaderboard, is it you kind of just have to listen to your customers and get feedback on what they need in the product?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, customers actually let us know. They tell us what would make their life even easier, what kind of data and reporting they want in the product. So yeah, a lot of this actually is driven by customer requests, which for sure, if you're listening to this, keep those coming because that's what tells us how we're doing.
And is some of what you guys are talking about here, is it going to enable that cloud movement as well?
Trying to think if any of these specific features talk to cloud movement. Yes, for sure. Actually, yeah, absolutely. We can dive into it.
Yeah, definitely hit those.
I would show this to y'all. I can't share. Let's see here. Host disabled. Oh well.
I can
it says you can't share.
I'll enable it.
Let's see if we can fix that.
I'm good at sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, try it now.
Yeah, there we go. Just so that I'm not surprising y'all with what we talk about here.
Yeah,
surprise us. That'll be fun.
That's just what you need for brand new, fresh off the presses, unrehearsed content. Just
totally right.
No ability to see it. We just go blind.
Yeah, right.
Well, I actually love what just happened. I kind of, without prompting, Jirah asked, well, surely it's going to talk about cloud enablement type stuff. And you could see a little bit of a pause, and it's like, oh yeah, it's in here. It's super in here. That's part of our story. And obviously Nutanix was born out of enabling the on-premises cloud story that is going to nicely fold into the hosted cloud story. I had somebody ask me an hour or two ago on a different conversation where Nutanix plays in that world. And to the layman, it would be, well, Nutanix was invented to give you that on premises. It wasn't invented to take you to the cloud, but the architecture simply is going to allow you to go on top of cloud hardware to make a cloud solution. And when I explained that to them, it was enlightening, and it all kind of came full circle and made sense.
Yeah, or I would even say bringing the cloud-like experience to any hardware stack, really, or a very broad hardware stack. Whether that's hardware that you own and lives in your cabinets, you lease or rent it in your cabinets, or you just flat out rent it, period, living in someone else's cabinets.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk through it. Jirah's going to help us, and he's going to highlight the things that he thinks most important to cover around the AOS 6.0 release. Yeah.
So which falls into our short-term releases bucket, right? So we have kind of two paths for customers, depending on, if it's a prod cluster or maybe a dev test cluster, or if it's what's their appetite for doing operations on the cluster. Some people want to touch it, once a year, right? Do the big summer updates and then just leave it for a year. For those, we have the long-term support releases. This one's a short-term support. We put out 3 or 4 of those in a given year. So this is 6.0, which also starts our 6.0 family of releases here. And we can kind of bin what we'll talk about today into DR and storage, and then analytics are the top areas to hit here.
So, Jirah, just to be clear, there's short-term releases, long-term releases. This is the latest evolution of the short-term releases, which is going to patch and fix things if there are things to patch and fix, as well as add new features.
Yep, totally. Yeah, correct on both counts. Our last LTS, I believe it was last month, dropped. So 5.20 is if you're planning for an upgrade now and you want to leave that baked for a very long time, look at 5.20 for a long-term leave it in place release.
And LTSR, long-term releases from Nutanix, is that 3 years, 2 years, 5 years? How do you guys measure that?
I believe the book says 18 months. So we're basically planning for an annual upgrade cadence with a little bit of grace period.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's jump into it. DR dashboard is where you're at now.
Yeah. So this is helping customers, if you had a lot of workloads, maybe all over the country, replicating like Raleigh to Charlotte, Houston to Dallas, bringing all of that data into one place where you can actually get a great dashboard showing how is all of my replication and disaster recovery planning, how's all my DR health and replication, am I meeting all my SLAs, and what links do I need to go look at and lay hands on to get back into what I've told the business we can maintain and support. So better visibility, better modeling of how everything's running there. Here's the one you mentioned, Andy, about migrating to cloud via better replication, right? So actually from cluster to cluster, squeezing more performance out of the exact same pipe. We can now do better, more efficient replication from one cluster to another, which, like if you're replicating to a cluster's in public cloud solution, is the exact same replication technology that you would use to do that. So helping you either move there faster when the workload needs to migrate, or keep it more up to sync if you're, like, say, using cloud as a DR target, right? How can I send my data up there faster so that data is therefore warmer?
Okay.
So some lab-based studies here showing maybe that even is up to a 10% improvement, on a given per link basis there. a really one that
You're really talking there about getting your data, your metadata, your files data backed up or replicated, or are we talking about like machine images even?
Yeah, the full VM, right? So whether it's like a SQL VM, doing your transactions, whether that's some VIP's virtual desktop, persistent in this case, right? That they save their spreadsheet to their desktop instead of a resilient file share like they ought to. How quickly is that spreadsheet on the desktop in the VM getting over to my DR site, right? So the faster we can do that, the more protected your VMs can stay. Or in this case, for like a efficiency improvement, the more VMs we can push through the same pipe, right, with the same change rate.
So is that just better compression on the protocols being delivered to replicate that?
It actually has some granularity under the hood around sending fewer bits that are more closely related to the actual changed bits themselves, right? So acting on smaller and smaller blocks of storage itself.
Okay, good.
Yeah. A huge one, right, that customers are going to love, absolutely, is where customers are using stuff like Rubrik, like Veeam, where a lot of the value prop of the backup and recovery solution is that ability to power on a backup. We're launching that capability on AHV, so there's still some integration to do with each specific vendor to say how do they take advantage of our instant restore capabilities and APIs. Bringing that to AHV to say, when you have a backup, when you have something stored and protected on external storage, how do I quote, power on a backup to get back up and running as quickly as possible, and then migrate that back on the cluster as it's running. So, long-term ask. Usually one of the only things that I really point out as like what's different if I, I'm running like Rubrik today with vSphere, move to Rubrik with AHV. It's kind of the one thing that I really mention as, you would solve that differently, right? We would say normally use snapshots on the cluster to do that instant power on the latest state of the data. Now you can do that as well as also power on a backup.
So let me ask a question before you move topics about the DR dashboard you had up.
Yeah.
Minutes ago. So let's just say that I'm an admin. I have a DR data center, and we'll just say something crazy like I've never tested it, or maybe I've only tested it, one time, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Is this to tell me that I can actually verify my DR, which I've probably not done in a long time, but do it automatically or have the system do it for me automatically, and then tell me whether or not things are the way that they're supposed to be?
Yes, the testing actually is like absolutely core to our DR functionality, right? Because if it never gets tested right, we don't really know how protected stuff is. Shocker, I know. And so I'll have to look at the latest bits. I haven't spun up 520 in a lab yet. Even on our older builds, right, it actually would say, hey, you configured this protection policy and this protection plan for recovering this app stack or this group of VMs. And oh, by the way, it hasn't been tested in X amount of time, right? It's probably about that time to do another DR test there.
Oh, wait, so it's going to tell on me too?
It's a little friendly encouragement.
Nice.
Because it costs so little, right? Like it's just like a one-click test this recovery plan type of operation, and it has the data it needs. It'll spin it up. You can even give it a sort of like non-routable sandbox network to go play with and put my VMs over there when I test, don't impact my production network. It's so easy that, we're definitely fans of testing as often as is appropriate, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right?
I did a good job of saying that without bursting out into a huge grin, but I mean, this is it, just so far, based on we've only gone through a couple of things, but this is a big one for a lot of people, being able to see and verify whether or not what's actually happening from their DR plan is actually happening successfully or not. I know plenty of people who say, oh yeah, we have DR. Yeah, we replicate virtual machines. Never tested it, never looked at it, have no idea whether or not it's even being received on the other side. So to be able to see it, verify it, and have that in front of you information about, whether or not it's gone through, whether or not it's successful, even whether or not you've tested it, is a huge deal.
No, for sure, right? The only thing better than like regular testing is I've heard of a handful of companies that do, rather than regular DR tests, they just do monthly failovers, right? Like just January in data center A, February in data center B, and boy, by golly, that your DR coverage is complete, right? When you're moving that frequently, the team gets comfortable doing it. You have what you need on both sides. All the network connectivity, firewall changes get replicated real well, or you fix them real fast. It's a great operational way to, even kind of remove some of the pain of like, but I have better connectivity and a faster ISP at one site than the other. Well, it gives you an incentive to make sure that they're both totally fit for purpose when you're going to run on it half the year. So,
yeah, that's great. That's definitely the way. Nothing better to test DR and verify DR than to run DR.
And for the systems admin, this is a great opportunity. So in my sysadmin life, I had multiple chances to be part of DR scenarios where we tested it, or in one scenario we were supposed to test it. But I went to Atlanta to I forget the name of the data center down there for our DR. But we had a DR plan in place, according to my boss. I got down there, and the hardware that they had reserved or had under contract, this was right after Hurricane Katrina. The hardware that we had reserved was 8 years old, and I couldn't begin to spin up anything. We were running, it wasn't even close. We were running VMware at the time. This was like servers with 2 gigs of memory in it. I came back and tried to have that conversation with my management. They didn't want to spend any more money. They didn't even care to listen. This in real time to be able to show them, guys, it won't work. There's no magic I can do to get down there and show them. In this case, you're showing them all the time that it can work. Or if you needed something to make it better, you could highlight it here without even having to do the test.
Right.
One of the strangest nights of my life. I'm in that data center, and there's people who 6 months, 12 months after Katrina are walking around in their pajamas. They're still living there.
It's a real theme, right? Like most people's, their best IT related story relates to like either a DR test or a DR event or something like that, right? That's when it gets real interesting real fast.
Right.
Just to go back to the story real quick, I think it was 3 years after Katrina, and people were still living in that backup data center in Atlanta.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. I scrolled past a headline that talked about people sleeping in data centers during lockdown just to be able to, maintain their availability to do their jobs. We got to get better. Got to get lower touch administration.
I don't know what kind of data centers they have, but the ones that I've been in aren't very comfy to stay for any amount of time that you don't have to be there.
It's almost like they're built to be comfortable for servers, not for humans.
I don't know. With the way my wife likes it cold at night and likes white noise, it might be the perfect place for her to sleep.
I can kind of relate. I'm usually the guy on like a long data center day wearing like the thinnest hoodie or thinnest jacket of the group.
Yeah.
Right. So keeping on with the storage theme. So introducing the ability for clusters to auto reserve rebuild space so that, hey, I don't just want to be able to lose a node in my cluster. I want to be able to lose a node and reprotect all data. And hey, stop me from being able to cross that line. We've always had the ability for customers to do this manually. This is more of a telling system to do it for you automatically and adapt as the cluster changes or the size changes over time as clusters grow or shrink. But then even better, show me how I'm doing, right? So give me kind of that, like I said, like a stoplight, right? Green, yellow, red, show how my usage matches up against the safe capacity of the cluster. Again, something that's kind of always been doable. But again, based on customer feedback, I've certainly gotten the request from customers to say, make this easier for me, right? I don't want to get out the calculator to say, oh, I've got 7 nodes and each one is this size. And if I lose one, then I drop by this much. Just make this easy for me. Don't let me put more on the cluster than it can safely protect, safely reheal.
Yep. So let me ask a question about this because I know that anybody who's spent any time with Prism will ask the question, well, on the home page, isn't there a little box that says rebuild capacity okay, or not there?
Totally.
This is just saying that it will make it so that it will always be okay.
Always be okay. And also let's have a little bit of heads up before we get right up to that okay line.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. But no, for sure, it's definitely the evolution of that, as well as, hey, that box you mentioned, Harvey, that says okay is on each cluster. If I have 20 clusters, do I have to go look at 20 clusters to see are they all saying okay? That's also right. Rolled up in a multi-cluster dashboard now to say, are they all okay? Which ones are red, green, yellow? How are they all running on capacity there? And then that same widget that you mentioned, actually, thanks, Harvey, for that tee up there. Now, if it is showing anything other than okay, right? If let's say a drive has failed or a node has failed, if the cluster is ever doing any kind of a rebuild of the data protection layer, well, boy, wouldn't you love for it to give you an estimated time to completion for that operation?
I would.
You would. That's fantastic because as of AOS 6.0, it's going to do that for you. So, rebuild progress bar and a time estimate based on what there is left to do there. Because we kind of know that from our metadata layer of these blocks are matching the container resiliency factor, right? RF2 or RF3, these blocks are not. So we kind of know how much work there is left to do. We can kind of guesstimate how much time that translates into for you, the operator. So you kind of can see the theme here of some net new capabilities, a lot of more of how do we model those capabilities back to you as the human.
Right.
Some under the covers performance improvements to help. Like I said, that metadata get reheated, get cache rewarming and going faster after it transfers from node to node. This is one of a lot of ways that we apply more performance to the cluster itself, make everything just go faster all over, or handle real life like a node failure with even less impact to the workload. And then several releases ago, we launched our new on-disk metadata format. We called it AES. It was a .next announcement a little while back. It's been around for new clusters for a long time. We're bringing that to existing clusters now as well. What it does is, with our theme of data locality, it localizes even more of the metadata as well. So that one example would be if a node chooses to move a piece of data from one disk to another, the rest of the cluster doesn't have to care about that at all, right? That's a local metadata operation. We just know that node is still a caretaker of one copy of that data, but which disk specifically, that's a local metadata operation. That helps keep our cluster-wide metadata thinner, faster, more resilient, more easily replicatable. It's got a lot of benefits, definitely for write operations where we're generating new data. And so this is coming to now existing all-flash clusters as well. So that's really great that we're bringing even more of the new stuff even to older clusters. And so the support for mixed drive capacity, this is a great one, partly because of just real-world logistics.
Right.
If you buy clusters from Nutanix, those are commonly using one SSD size is 1.92. It's specifically 1.92 terabytes. Other manufacturers might use SSDs that are 2.0 SSDs. Functionally no different, but they're 0.08 terabytes larger. There are some manufacturers that even have both in stock, or maybe they had 1.92s for a while. If a drive fails, you might get dispatched a larger drive, whether it's a little bit larger or a lot larger, depending on what they've retired since then. So now our clusters can support either intentional disk growth, even this one's new to me, the ability to have larger drives added to open slots. So if you buy a node that's half full on day one, when you go to fill it up, maybe you want even bigger drives than you started out with. But also if you got sent a drive that was bigger than the one that failed out, making all of that simple and easy to say, that totally will keep on working fine. Keep that all simple for you as the customer. And then the last one here, so capacity planning for non-Nutanix infrastructure. So we've had this one for ourselves for a long time, right? The ability to get a dashboard, even across multiple clusters, to say, where are my hotspots trending? Where am I going to run out of CPU, memory, storage? What do I need to address in my next budget cycle, planning cycle in the next 12 months? With this, we can also now pull out stats from vCenter as well. So if you were 80% on Nutanix, 20% on legacy, but not yet fully migrated over, but had more left to do, we can still ingest those metrics and say, hey, by the way, that over there, that storage is getting full, that memory is getting full, that CPU is going to trend to be exhausted in 98 days, 99 days, whatever the timer looks like for you. So we can help model your growth trends even on non-Nutanix infrastructure back in Prism Central, so that we have understanding of that data and, more importantly, early warnings for you guys.
Yeah. That's great. That's definitely one that I think a lot of people will get some gains out of, especially those who are halfway or partially, of the way along their Nutanix journey, and they still have some leftover clusters that are not Nutanix but running VMware. This gives them kind of a leg to stand on in getting all of that information in one place and having it be easily viewable.
Yeah, the more we can help make that an easy management experience, the more customers are going to like that.
And this gets into the world where Nutanix takes analytics for themselves and now applies that to others, including cloud technologies moving forward. So whether you get benefit out of Nutanix as it relates to Nutanix products, but the opportunity for Nutanix is to get the data, the analytics around other platforms and how they may or may not interact with Nutanix, still the ability to get that information. Nutanix from day one has been a user experience and analytics company. That'll just become more and more obvious as things like what we just talked about there to pull the data out of the VMware side of the house become more mainstream.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can draw a pretty straight line from even the way we started out with, I think we had nodes initially that were 100 gigabytes of flash per node. Just crazy, crazy small amounts of flash, because that was the economics of server storage back then, right? Flash was just ungodly expensive, and it only worked as a company, as a business model for what we did because of insight into that data, right? What is the truly hot storage? What are the key most used blocks of that storage? At that time, right, when hybrid was super fashionable to say, we only need to put this much on flash, that much can stay on magnetic storage, and still outperform even all flash arrays of the day, due to that analytics and data insight. So yeah, that's a great point, Andy.
So Jirah, help me on that topic understand what Nutanix is doing around M2 drives, M.2, right?
Yeah, we've been using them for years. So they are currently the boot drive of, and actually there's two of them, of virtually every node on the planet that we across almost all manufacturers, right? So whether it's our NX hardware, HP, Lenovo, Dell, almost everybody's using M.2 and usually mirrored M.2 as the boot storage today. I say boot, it's going to hold your hypervisor, whether that's ESXi, AHV, Hyper-V, and also the CVM full OS lives on that as well. So yeah, we're definitely using those left and right. There aren't a lot of server form factors that I see, this is just me talking here, that use M.2 as the front-facing hot swappable storage on the front of a server. So for that, we're still using, commonly 2.5-inch drive form factors on the front there.
Is that because there's just not enough value gain in using those for the IOPS of the hosted workloads?
Well, M.2 is really, it's more like a physical form factor, right? It's the physical size of the chip. It looks like a DIMM, right? But it can be presented back logically to the underlying system as either SAS or SATA or NVMe, right? NVMe being like a PCI device.
Right.
So that all applies actually to what's up front as well. So even though you look at the front and see a bunch of 2.5-inch drives up front, they can also be SAS or SATA or NVMe drives. I'm talking just in general server hardware here, right? Not specifically to Nutanix. So when those can also all be NVMe devices, then I'm getting all the performance I would get out of those if they were on the motherboard M.2 devices. If we're talking NVMe to NVMe, right? That's apples to apples. Getting into Nutanix world specifically, right? We can do that as well, right? We definitely have all NVMe nodes where even though you look up front on the server and see 2.5-inch, drives in sleds, they're NVMe devices, right? So they're running like a PCI storage device. They're screaming fast.
Oh, I'd like to have one of those.
Yeah, oh, well, me too. Right? If you find one, let me know. I can point to some great performance labs that have them running, and we show some pretty impressive numbers on them.
What's
My house is strangely devoid of them.
What's the large? What's the largest NVMe or in M.2 drives that you guys are seeing deployed in that scenario, or do you see any of them? Is that just all just pie in the sky?
The biggest NVMe drives, I want to say they're 7.68 terabytes right now, with probably 15 point, whatever that would be, 15.36 is probably really, over the horizon. Like it's all about, in some ways, it's always tied to economics of mass production, right? So, which is a little bit of an interesting year for that.
Oh, yeah. But let's say 5 years from now, the way we used to talk about SSDs, like, futuristic, or now we're talking M2s are going to be that's what you get in a drive, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah, those young whippersnappers won't know how hard we had it back in the day.
Right.
I mean, it's it's a kind of a common refrain from like the PC building community of there's nothing in here now, right? It's CPU memory on the motherboard, GPU if you're going to game with it, and then all the storage lives on those M.2 slots on the motherboard, and the box just feels empty, right? Compared to, I think back to my first computer, and I mean, serial card, sound card, video card, USB card, modem. Oh yeah, my gosh, modem, and then separate Ethernet. I mean, like you could fill out, 7 or 8 slots real easy. And we haven't even added like a second controller for like a second floppy drive, right? How are you going to copy a floppy without a second floppy drive?
Oh gosh, you're making me feel old now.
What are you going to do with those PCI slots?
Right.
Oh man, PCI luxury, right? I mean, we had the ISOs, we had the there was something else before that too.
It was ISA or ISE. ISA.
AGP was the new hotness. I mean, we got acronyms, man.
Yeah, I just I'm experiencing like the user experience on a desktop or whatever. The future, you walk in a room and the Hello camera is gonna see you walking in the room. It's gonna boot the whole thing up. By the time you sit down, you're booted up, logged in. Like,
oh yeah. Either y'all into Macs? Are you all both full PC guys?
I swap.
Okay. Have you played with the new M1 stuff?
No, I do not have a brand new one. How dare you?
It's well, if it helps, I had to give mine to my wife, so I don't have one yet either.
So but, did you sit in line outside the store? Did you camp out?
But there is one in my house. So you plug in an external display. The onboard display doesn't blink to black, just stays running the whole time. It's the weirdest thing to get used to, because it's an onboard display controller. We're also used to everything from Intel, from AMD, from NVIDIA, and they'll behave the same way. I plug in the display, my primary display goes black, it figures out what's up, and then both come back up.
Right.
But in this one, on the new stuff, the new ones don't even blink off. And likewise, I use both. I game on my PC. I work on my Mac. Neither one wakes up from sleep instantly. The new one's really by the time that screen is the hinge is up and visible, to your point, Andy, it's so crazy fast. Our kids will never believe what we used to go through.
Well, we take that to the same conversation with spinning drives. We used to wake ours up. It was still 15, 30 seconds before.
Oh yeah.
I was like,
they used to go to sleep if you didn't use them often enough, right?
Yeah.
And I remember, being excited going from 5,400 RPM to 7,200.
What's an RPM?
Right. Oh my gosh.
Your car doesn't even do that, Harvey. I guess. No, it doesn't. Or does the electric motor have some similarity to RPM?
It does. I won't get started on that, but we'll just say the new motor they just were talking about with the launch the other day does 20,000 RPMs, which is ridiculous.
But isn't an RPM, that's a tire revolution now, isn't it?
This is for the motor. So yeah, but Yes, see, you're gonna get
Yeah,
me
I
started.
tried to drag you into it. I shouldn't have done that.
But there's got to be a one-to-one relationship, right? Because there's no transmission.
That's right. The wheels actually, go straight into the motor. So there's not a lot of those other parts that are going on. So that when you say go, it goes. You're gonna get my propeller spinning over here, Jirah.
At how many RPMs?
Apparently 20K with a carbon reinforced motor.
I have to tell you guys a story along this line. It's totally off topic from the Nutanix conversation, but I was driving to Atlanta over the weekend on Friday, and there was a Mach-E electric Mustang at the gas station getting picked up by a wrecker. And the guy lived in Charlotte, but didn't have a full charge, but needed to get to Atlanta. So he went ahead and left with the idea he would stop halfway and charge. Well, he almost ran out and pulled off only to find that the charging station was out of service. And so calling the wrecker company.
That's rough.
I thought if I had a rope, I'd pull him another 20 miles if that's what he needed.
See, that is why I still stay Tesla, because you know things like that. There's intelligence built in, and they're the only ones with the infrastructure all of their own, which is a huge deal.
The Lightning, I think they're dabbling with power transfer out of the vehicle as well.
Yeah,
I think today, like they're talking about a house, right? Like you buy the Lightning, and it can be a whole home generator, if you will, battery, really, for like up to 3 days. But that's not radically different if it evolves just a little bit from being able to, like, quote, jumpstart another electric vehicle.
Yeah. I mean, they do it now with cell phones all the time. You can use one cell phone to charge another. So
yeah, don't think too hard about the efficiency of doing.
Now you got two cars with no charge. Not much charge. All right, gentlemen, I'll let you go. I've got one more podcast today, but I appreciate Jirah you jumping in and
I dare any other podcast to get as far back in computer history and then back up to cutting edge in one episode.
That's probably a true statement. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining, and we'll do it again next week.
Talk to you all then.
Thanks.